Welcome to The Debt Investor. My name is Matthew, and today we're going to learn one thing and one thing only, and it's the difference between amortized and interest-only loans, right? So if you don't know what that means, it doesn't matter. I'm going to explain it to you step by step right here. And at the end, you're going to walk away knowing which one of these is the better choice for note investing or as a note investor. So before we get into all that, we need to know what's the difference between an amortized loan and an interest-only loan. So amortized is going to do one thing differently. It's going to pay you back interest and principal. Whereas interest only is, just going to pay you interest only. And so with amortized, your balance declines over time, and interest only, your balance stays flat, and then they owe you a lump sum at the end. And so that's going to result in a larger balloon payment. Now, with amortized, once again, your capital comes back every single month, so you can redeploy it faster, and then it also takes risk off the table. So amortized loans are typically going to be home loans, car loans, stuff like that. So if you go get a 5 or 7 year car loan, it's amortized, right? Because you're going to pay the principal down every single month as well as the interest. With interest only, these are typically going to be HELOCs and then hard money loans, which if you don't know what that is, don't worry. But it's a type of loan that real estate investor can get to fund projects. So where does each one of these fit in, right? Well, amortized, they're going to be longer term. So they're going to be for things like rentals. And they're going to be for things like owner-occupied homes, right? Because they don't want an investment loan. They don't want it to be short-term. And also, landlords and owner-occupants, they want to pay their balance down over time. Why? Because they eventually want it to be zero. And so it's for stable and seasoned properties. So if we know that, hey, this property will rent for $1,500, well, then I can lend, say, enough to make the payment $800, and I can do so comfortably, right? Because they're going to make that $800 payment because they're getting 15 and they want to keep doing so. And so typically on real estate, amortized loans are anywhere between 15 and 30 years. They can be shorter. I've seen them as short as 3 years, 5 years. It really depends on the project. And so interest only, these are going to be shorter term and subsequently higher risk, right? And so these are going to be for things like new construction, fix and flips. So think about it, right? Amortized is great because it pays the principal back, but it's only on income generating properties and people who live in the homes. Whereas new construction, they don't want as high of a payment because the property doesn't produce income. Their end goal is to actually sell it. And so that's why you would use interest only here. So think about it like this. If you lend someone $30,000, call it 12%, okay? Every single month, they're going to owe you $300. And then at the very end of that loan, they're going to pay you back your $30,000. So they're going to use your $30,000 to either, let's say, fix a house because you can't build a house for $30,000. And then every month they're going to pay you $300, right? And then once the house sells right here, they're going to pay you back your entire original $30,000. And so neither one is right nor wrong, right? They're just different use cases. But higher risk typically comes from the shorter interest-only structure just because of the nature of the projects. New construction and fix and flip have a lot higher failure rates than rentals and buy and hold, right? As of current, the average amortized loan delinquency rate is right at 1.88% nationwide. So it's pretty low. I don't know the statistic over here, but I would be willing to bet money that it's higher. And so here's just an illustration of your risk, the risk that you take on both an interest-only loan and an amortized loan. So we can see up here, this white line is the property value, and this is just assuming it doesn't appreciate. And the red line is your interest only, and then the green is your amortized, right? And so these represent the remaining loan balance. So these are both 84-month loans, and at the end of the interest-only loan, we still owe the same amount that they started with, or they still owe the same amount that they did originally. Whereas amortized, they're taking all this risk off the table for you, and they're doing you a favor by returning your capital. And so think about it. If something goes wrong, say this house is worth $100,000, okay, and you lend $50,000, right? Now, down here, month 60, they default, okay? Would you rather them default on an interest-only loan or an amortized loan? Well, if you picked amortized, you are correct. The reason why is because the property is worth $100,000, interest only, there's only $50,000 worth of equity. But with the amortized, there is now $80,000 worth of equity, right? Because they've paid all the way down to 20%. What we call this an LTV, but that's for a different day. And so the amortized holds a lot less risk the further into the loan you get. So the widening gap between the green and the red line, all it is it's growing the equity cushion on the loan, and it makes the loan safer overall. So here's a real example of amortized versus interest only, right? We're going to keep the variables constant. So both have a $30,000 loan amount, both have a 12% interest rate, and both are for 7 years. So your interest only, this is going to be 1% a month, which is going to be $300 a month, right? 30,000 times 0.01 is $300. Whereas your amortized monthly payment is going to be $529.58. And so at the end of 84 months with this one, they're going to owe you $30,000. But with your amortized, at the end of 84 months, they're going to owe you approximately $0. And so the payment's higher just because it's paying down the principal, but does it automatically make it better? Let's find out. And so here is how the payments are calculated, right? Once again, interest only, 30,000 times 12% divided by 12 months is 1% a month, brings our payment to $300 per month. And this is, once again, just to keep your memory fresh, this is going to be for things like construction, rehab, etc. And then your amortized, it's going to be the same 12% interest. And if you want to look up the amortization formula, it's a little complicated, so I didn't include it here. But if you're into math and really want to understand it, just look up the amortization formula, and it's online. So they're going to pay you the same 12%, $300, plus principal. So in this case, it's going to be $229.58, right? And that's just because of what the amortization formula comes up with. And so that's going to convert your monthly payment to $529 a month. Now, here is the interesting part, okay? This $529, as we just saw, it was $300, and then the principal pay down was $229.58. But the interesting part is because we pay this down, so month one, our balance is going to be $30,000, right? But since we paid it down $229, our new balance is going to be $29,781 and whatever, right? And so now we're only paying interest on this. So we're getting 12% on the remaining balance. And so you can see here, the interest portion of this loan is in the red below this white line. And then the principal portion, the gray, is our money coming back to us. So that is all this gray right here is taking risk off the table, and it's putting it back in our pocket so we can redeploy the money. And so that's why I personally like amortized loans better, just because it does return my money faster. I still get the same 12% or the same stated rate, and they are a little bit safe, actually a lot safer in my opinion. And so just for those who are curious, or maybe you don't do well with visuals, here's the actual amortization schedule. So these are the numbers behind it, right? So year one, we start with a $30,000 balance. And then once again, the payments are $529. So $529 times 12 is $6,348 per year in payments, okay? And that is broken up as seen here. So the first year, $3,400 goes to interest, and the remaining $2,900 goes to principal. Now, after we pay the $2,900 down, our ending balance for the year is going to be a little bit over $27,000. Skip to, say, year four, we now only owe $20,000, or they now only owe $20,000. And so now we're only paying, they're only paying the interest on the $20,000. So the interest is a lot lower, right? So here it's $2,000, which means $4,000 gets to come back to us so we can take it and redeploy it. So we're still getting the same rate. So in this case, it was 12%, just to make the math easy. And it's paying the loan down faster, right? As opposed to having to wait for one event like a refinance or a sale, we get paid back every single month. And so this is just a brief infographic, I guess you could call it, of to display your risk over time. So with your interest only, right, it stays the exact same throughout the life of the loan. And then when they pay this back, so when they pay this $30,000 back, that is called a balloon. Whereas your amortized, they start with a $30,000 balance and they end with a $0 balance, right? Because they're paying it back over time. And once again, every principal payment reduces your risk as a lender. So here is the advantage of amortized loans, right? It gives you the ability to reinvest. And I love it, right? So you get your principal back. Remember, month one, we got $229. Month two, we got a little bit more and a little bit more every month after. And so that's going to turn into available cash so that you can buy another note, right? And say that note also earns 12%. So now you are what we like to call diversified. Instead of having all your eggs in one basket, you quite literally have multiple baskets. And so your return capital, it still can go right back to work. It's just not tied up in multiple projects. So can amortized catch up with the returns of interest only? Absolutely, right? This one over here, you get $300 a month. It's interest only. And then your first note paid you $300 in interest month one, but then every month after it declines, right? Because the balance declines. But you take this and deploy it into another note and the same thing happens. So you still get the same 12% throughout both, or 8% or 10% or whatever it might be. The only difference with amortized is you get your money back and you take risk off the table. And so I don't know about you, but if I had two choices, they both got the same return, but one reduced the risk, I would pick that one. Well, you literally can. It's amortized, and that's why banks do it. Every home loan you see is an amortized loan, and it's for a reason, right? It's not just because banks, I mean, they'll lend you money forever. And so let's cover some pros and cons, right? Well, amortized, what does it do? We've been over that it lowers risk over time, and it also, that subsequently brings your capital or your principal back to you so you can redeploy, right? And the redeployment leads to an easier diversification, which subsequently more flexibility, right? Now, the cons of this is you are going to have to reinvest this capital. So you're going to have to find somewhere to put it. And over time, you're going to get less interest. But as long as you keep the capital moving, it's the same exact return. Whereas interest only, you're going to get the higher cash flow, a simpler structure, and predictable payments are in both of them. But the cons, you're going to have your money out for a long time. So once again, $30,000 over here. They owe you $30,000 at the end, right? But $30,000 with an amortized loan, what do they owe you at the end? Zero. It's completely paid off. And so this is also going to lead to a larger balloon risk, once again, because these are on projects like new construction and rehabs where you have to wait on a liquidity event. And all that means is that you are waiting on the borrower to either refinance you out or sell the property in order to get your money back. And if they don't, then you're stuck hoping that they have enough in reserves to make the payment. And so that's going to result in your capital being exposed longer. Now, why do I prefer amortized loans? Well, for the starters, they're lower risk, right? Because remember, we get paid back every single month. Second one is pretty much the same thing. It's just a different way of saying it. It's capital recovery. We get our money back every single month, and that lowers our risk. And then number three, we get to reinvest those funds into more notes. So instead of having everything in one basket, we can have three smaller baskets, right? And it ends up being the exact same return with just a little more diversification. Okay? And so don't get me wrong, interest-only notes, they can and they will work, but amortized notes, they let you recover capital, reduce exposure, and put your money back to work sooner.